because I'm neurodiverse myself. I'm dyslexic, which means my recollection of my school life was, and I went to school when there were still blackboards. Teachers used to write things on blackboards and pupils used to learn by copying them. I spent all my life trying to finish what the teacher had written on the board before she rubbed it off and moved on to the next board, and trying to figure out whether that was a D or a B that she had written. As a consequence of that, I left school with 2 O-levels, or GCSEs as they're now called. And my final report was kind of no hope for this guy. My son is also dyslexic, and he got diagnosed very early. I'd never been diagnosed because I don't think it was recognized back in those days. And through school, got all the support he needed. He left school very proudly with a full set of A-levels, went on to study geography at Sheffield, came out with a first, and is now a teacher. That was something I could have only dreamt of. My destination was to, when I left school, was to somehow survive, which of course I did, because although I couldn't write and I can't spell and I never take notes in meetings, and I find it difficult to read, I have strengths. And as soon as I recognized that and other people recognized that, I was able to progress. Today's session is all about neurodiversity in all its forms. And I'm delighted to welcome today Meike. Give us a wave, Meike, and say hello.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Very happy to be here today, and thank you for joining.
So Meike actually works with me at the Diversity Project. She leads the neurodiversity stream at the Diversity Project, and today is going to take us through neurodiversity in all its forms, and help explain what it is and how neurodiverse people have got significant strengths that we need to harness and how we harness them. Meike, welcome to you.
Thank you.
And Meike's asked as well if we can try and make this session interactive. So bearing in mind there's only 16 and probably 20 by the time everybody joins us on the call, don't hesitate to come off mute and interrupt. Don't hesitate to put your hand up and I'll bring you in. Don't hesitate to write a question in the chat. Let's try and make this as interactive as we can today. So welcome. Meike, I'm going to say over to you now, and I promise I'll interrupt you as soon as I can, and if I don't, I'm sure somebody else will. So welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, and hi again. Thank you for joining. I guess what I want to do today is to talk about neurodiversity, what it is, what it means, but in particular what the benefits are and how we can access those. Starting from recruitment through to retention, how do we ensure that we can access the amazing skills which neurodivergent brains clearly bring, and how do we ensure everyone feels included and feels comfortable enough to come forward, and also ask for help when they need it. So I've put together a few slides which I'm going to start to share now, but as Mark said, please jump in anytime when there's a question or you would like to know more about a specific aspect, or I'll try and do my best to respond. Okay, cool. So let's have a quick look at what it is. So neurodiversity describes how diverse we are from a neurological perspective. So it relates to the diversity of human brains, and it thinks about our differences in neurological setups, so how our brains are wired, as just another variation of the human race. So basically, you've got a neurotypical brain, a mainstream brain, and an autistic brain, and or dyslexic brain or so. And the differences are basically, well, somebody's got blonde hair and the other person's got brown or black hair. So it's just another variation within the human race. And obviously, neurodiversity is related to the brain. And therefore, it has the huge benefit of making a massive, massive contribution to overall diversity of thought, because neurodivergent brains, because of the differences in brain wiring, have a slightly different skill set of strengths and weaknesses, and sometimes very, very unique skills. They approach problems differently. They are good at pointing out issues which other people wouldn't necessarily see, just because they are on a slightly different scale of thinking and learning when compared to neurotypical brains. And when we talk about neurodiversity, we actually mean the combination of neurotypical brains and neurodivergent brains. So this includes all of us. And neurodivergent would refer to brains which are dyslexic, or people with autism, dyspraxia, ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And you can already see the use of the word disorder. When we follow the medical model, it's very much focused on, what is it you can't do? What are your deficiencies, and so on. The neurodiversity school of thought wants to focus on the strengths, and the way we want to harness them and approach them and actually crack the walnut is by really concentrating on the strengths and getting through them by supporting the weaknesses and people with their challenges, which there clearly are as well. So that's the idea behind. And what's very specific about neurodivergent brains is that their skill profile is very spiky. So that's what I try to explain here in this chart, which I've put together. This dotted line here, that's sort of the average IQ. And the neurotypical brain's skills profile sort of navigates quite closely around this IQ, so around the average. So there's going to be some aspects of your life where you're really good at and you're talented, and then there are other aspects which you're struggling a little bit with. And neurodivergent brains, like dyslexic brains or ADHD brains, they would have very distinct strengths, very distinct skills, but also quite substantial challenges. So overall, it's a lot spikier. It's not as smooth around the IQ. The expression of strengths and challenges is a lot clearer, a lot more pronounced. And you can see this actually on neuroimaging, so it's actually real. And this is quite interesting. So neuroimaging gives you an idea of which areas of the brain are active when you perform a particular skill. So you get one of these hats, which are the wiring and so on, and then it measures what's going on in your brain. And these two brains were given the exact same problem to solve. And on the left here, we've got the neurotypical brain, and on the right-hand side, that's the neurodivergent brain. It's an ADHD brain, by the way, in this example. And obviously, brain on the left thinks, oh yeah, I'm going to, switch my light on and think a little bit. And the brain on the right thinks, yeah, easy peasy. Not quite sure why I got out of bed for this exercise. Yeah, well, doesn't really bother me too much. So the exact same exercise, and they switch on different areas of the brain. One is a lot more active than the other. And if you give them a different task, a different problem to solve, it might be the exact opposite. And that's just the beauty of it. It's certain things which neurotypical brains have to go full power are quite an easy task for neurodivergent brains, and vice versa. And on this slide here, which is actually a little bit busy, and we're not going to go through everything in detail, but the orange boxes show you, well, the most prevalent conditions. I don't like that word actually, but I can't come up with a better one. So all in all, it's round about 20%, between 15 and 20% of the UK population, which are either autistic, have ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and so on. So there's a huge number of people surrounding us absolutely everywhere, family, friends, colleagues, and so on. Definitely at work, we're going to have people amongst us, colleagues amongst us. And because neurodiversity is a relatively new aspect to overall diversity, we've not been talking about it to a huge extent in previous years, and people are quite reluctant to come out and share details about their brain, basically. So, so in terms of disclosure, we're below 1% when we look at figures, of which there aren't many. But yeah, there's sort of a large hidden gap of people disclosing or not disclosing. Yeah, and in terms of strengths we can harness, there's creativity, there's public speaking skills, there's process structuring, problem solving. Autistic colleagues they've got massive attention to detail. It's really quite astonishing how long they can focus on routine tasks and get them done and put them into a process, structure this process and apply it over and over again. When you've got an ADHD brain, they're very, very results oriented, because for an ADHD brain, something has to happen all the time. That's sort of what keeps them awake. So they jump very passionately from one result to the next and really get a lot done in their passion and with their drive. Dyslexia, dyspraxia, often you've got amazing creativity, very good people skills, very good ability to construct relationships, and very loyal as well. So those are obviously very sought after skills, and we all should be able to benefit from them. We can only do that when we provide support with some of the challenges, and also accept that those challenges are there, and you know, not try to raise them over and over again in year-end appraisals, but just accept that this is the case, and we've got this spiky skills profile to be able to benefit from the strengths. We simply have to provide some support with, or simply accept those challenges. They're there and they're not going to go away. Some of them are working memory, and a lot of those neurodivergent conditions are related to working memory. Working memory is not short-term memory. It's part of the prefrontal cortex. It's somewhere here, and it is where you quickly save down what you are about to do. So when, for example, you walk into your kitchen and you want to grab something from your fridge, it would be parked here, like, yeah, I wanted to go into the kitchen and grab some water from the fridge. And with neurodivergent brains, it happens quite frequently that they go into the kitchen and then it's gone, and they're like, what did I want here? And we've all got this, but with neurodivergent brains, it's a lot more frequent, and this problem or this challenge is actually very prevalent and very prominent. And working memory, keeping in mind what you were about to do, that is the first step to quite a lot of exercises done by the prefrontal cortex. So this involves planning and organizing. It involves being able to model possible outcomes of different situations. So think through in your mind what the different options of dealing with one problem could lead to, and what the pros and cons are. And because this area of the brain is slightly weaker in most neurodivergent brains, other parts are stronger. And that's how we get to this neuroimaging picture, which we've just looked at. But these are things you can look up everywhere. So pros and cons, there's a lot of lists, a lot of overviews of what brains can do and what they typically struggle with. So what I've done instead was I've asked a few colleagues who are openly autistic or have an ADHD brain, dyslexic, and so on. And I've asked them, what do you think, helps you most? What's your biggest, and I don't like the word superpower, but what does your different wiring enable you to do? What comes easily to you? And there was an autistic fund manager who said something which I found really interesting, found this really, really fascinating, actually. And she said, I'm autistic, and this enables me to, when I analyze a company, when I do my fundamental company analysis, and I want to get to the buy and sell decision or recommendation, I can focus on the facts only. I have a conversation with the CEO and I only listen to the facts. I am able to completely exclude the facts, whether I like the person or not, whether a question which I'm about to ask is going to make the CEO feel really uncomfortable in front of the audience of analysts and so on. I don't really care about those things. I can block them out in this particular situation because what I am after is simply the facts. I just want to perform my analysis and I can switch parts of my brain off and just focus on it. And that's obviously a great skill because then you've got an analysis which is not influenced by the emotional part of your brain, basically. And an ADHD colleague, and now don't laugh because the colleague is me, this colleague feels calmest when they are about to step on stage and give a presentation to a massive audience. So when I sit there in the first row and somebody is sort of announcing you and you're about to go on stage and you hear your name and then you walk up those steps and you turn around and face the audience and they all stare at you, that's the moment I feel calmest. I just go, oh, hi, thanks for coming, great to see you. And whenever I tell my colleagues about this, they're like, oh my God, that's the worst. I mean, once I get started, it's fine. I sort of, get into the mood and so on. But that moment, that's just terror. Pressure's on. I'm like, yeah, pressure's on. Great. That's exactly what I need. I really enjoy it. Then I had a colleague with dyslexia at HSBC, and she always said, yeah, I really struggle, for example, taking notes during a meeting or writing minutes takes a day. I honestly can't do that, but I can calculate, and gosh, I can calculate. And she calculates by, she's effectively able to feel the outcome of a maths problem. She can visualize, and that's the way she's describing it. She can see the solution of a maths problem in her head. She can relate to it, and it's sort of it's a 3D picture she's got in her head. She's saying, I find that fascinating. I absolutely cannot understand how this can work, but it obviously works for her. She can calculate like she's the goddess of maths, seriously. And then a friend of mine who works at Deutsche Bank, and he joined Deutsche Bank through their autism internship program after he had tried to get a graduate job and applied 80 times for the graduate program of various different city firms. He got into Deutsche Bank through the autism internship program. He's got autism and ADHD, and he's brilliant. He's been there for 5 years now. He's doing absolutely brilliantly, but he just struggled so much to get his foot into the door. So this initial step, the recruitment stage, was almost impossible for him to overcome. And it would have been such a shame for our industry if we didn't have the wonderful Adam. So Adam is saying, I'm actually really struggling with planning and organizing. And you know what? This makes me the best person on the planet for crisis management because I'm constantly in a crisis. I don't plan, I don't organize, so everything's an emergency. So yeah, if there's an emergency at work, I'm very happy to deal with it. It's, not a problem. It's what I do all day long. Emergencies are wonderful. I really like them. So those are the things we can access, and those are the very special skills, which are right there for us to benefit from. And they are so special because they're just part of how these brains are set up. It's nothing out of the ordinary for them. This is just how they operate day in, day out. And obviously then no one's better. Yeah, so those were some little stories of how neurodivergent colleagues feel about their strengths and their powers and how they feel they can use them at work, make use of them. So our question then is, how do we create the environment that they feel comfortable enough to tell us this and say, this is my super skill and this is what I need to be able to use it. And of course, there's how to neuroinclusion. So how do we make it work?
Meike, I'm just going to interrupt the question because there's a question that Marie Helen has asked. Can people have a combination of neuro challenges? So can they be ADHD and dyslexic, for example?
There's actually quite a lot of crossover. If you look at the ADHD population, 80% of people with ADHD have another neurodivergent condition as well. There's a high crossover with dyslexia, dyspraxia, high crossover with autism, and also some of the symptoms are similar. Working memory challenges, for example, you can have across the board, across all conditions. Creativity is one skill, one ability which applies to quite a lot of conditions. So there's a lot of crossover, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if there are any other questions, just jump in. I can't see it here when somebody raises their hand, I think because I'm sharing my screen, or maybe I've simply not figured it out. So yeah.
There's a question in the chat here. Marie, do you want to come off mute and ask the question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was wondering, dyscalculia, if it's recognized as one of these neurodiversity, because I haven't seen on your presentation.
It is actually, yes. I've chosen a few conditions, but not all of them. But it is, dyscalculia is obviously a challenge with numbers, and similar to dyslexia being a challenge with literacy, for example. And yes, it would fall within this category.
Will it have the same symptom of one of the one listed, or is going to have something totally different?
It's actually similar. So they would obviously struggle with recognizing figures and applying the logic behind maths. But the strengths are pretty similar because the area of the brain which is involved is the prefrontal cortex. So there you would have a slightly thinner prefrontal cortex setup compared to a mainstream brain, which then means that other areas of the brain are developed more strongly.
Yeah, and we will know which are the developed area.
Yes, you can see that on neuroimaging, for example. Yeah, so we've made a lot of progress recognizing neurodivergent conditions also through science, so neuroimaging, and also with the analysis of the human genome. You can, we've got, for example, 20 genes identified which are associated with ADHD, and some of them are also associated with dyslexia. So there's a clear genetic difference, a slightly longer gene in the dyslexic brain, for example, when compared to a neurotypical brain. So, so it's very, very easily recognizable.
Yeah, and the last question, how do we consider IQ and neurodiversity?
You can have neurodiversity at all ranges of IQ. I would say within our industry, we're definitely looking at the higher functioning end. So high IQ and very, very high functioning. But you can have, just like with neurotypical brains, you can have the entire spectrum of IQ from low to very high.
Okay, so the neurodiversity is not, it doesn't imply any changes on your IQ. So you could be,
no.
So it's considering the IQ.
It doesn't affect the IQ. Yeah, exactly. It's a different type of skills.
Yeah.
Within the overall normal human IQ spectrum.
Okay. Is it true that Albert Einstein could have been dyslexic?
I think there are
rumors,
indications that he might have been.
Yeah.
Obviously, they didn't recognize it as such at the time. But obviously he had very, very, very distinct skills as well.
Yeah.
And he openly admitted that he struggled with certain tasks. So it could make sense, but obviously we're never going to find out.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Marie, Meike, Noelle's got her hand up.
Yeah, I was just pausing. Hi, I was pausing on the bullet, fear of negative consequences, and what, you know, where are they coming from on that, and what type of consequences are these colleagues afraid of? Because I'm mindful my daughter's dyslexic, and she actually has a very different view of life. Maybe the way that the school's training her, she sees her dyslexia as a superpower. And she owns it, and is very, you know, even at 10 years of age, is very forthright in saying about it and talking about it. So I was curious as to what we should be doing in the workplace right now with these colleagues, if this is how they're feeling.
Yeah, thank you. I really hope that by the time your daughter joins the workforce, there's not going to be any fear anymore. At the moment, a lot of neurodivergent colleagues find it quite difficult to talk about their dyslexia, for example, or ADHD. And one of the reasons is, and I put it down here, second bullet, talking about your brain it's something very, very personal. It's about who you are. And once it's out there, you can't really take it back. It's out there. And because of the spiky skills profile, because of the very distinct strengths, but also the quite distinct weaknesses. And those weaknesses are sometimes in areas where you think, or where the workforce, let's say, assumes that at a certain level of seniority or with this and that education, we all know how to ask a question in a senior management meeting, what types of questions to ask, when to jump in, how to phrase them, and so on and so on. Or we all understand the structure of the firm, who's in charge of what, the org chart is set up in a certain way because, and with problem A, B, C, you don't bother the CEO, you go to someone else. So we somehow, or I mean us as the overall workforce, there's somehow the assumption that you get it at some point, and you know how to navigate your way in the work environment. And sometimes for a neurodivergent brain, it feels as if every morning you arrive at work in your spaceship, and then you take off your helmet and you walk into the HSBC office and you're like, hi guys. And it's really sometimes like being on a different planet, and you don't really understand why the people of Earth are operating in this way and why the structure is like this and that. And therefore there can sometimes be those traps in a way, which you then find yourself in. And a lot of people have experienced that. And it was then pointed out to them as, oh my God, I mean, your question was really embarrassing. How could you ask this? Or honestly, we would expect you to know this by now. And therefore, quite a few people actually have concluded, okay, I'm going to shut up about this. I'm just not going to say anything anymore because I don't want anyone to get to some sort of conclusion to judge me in a way. So I'm doing my very best to hide it. And there's unfortunately more people than we think who decide to not disclose.
Okay.
And hopefully that's all going to improve. And you know, there's a lot of more focus on neurodiversity and the amazing strengths associated with it. But for now, that's the situation.
No, can I share my own experience there as a dyslexic? I have these moments where I get terribly creative and get terribly excited. Kate is smiling there because she knows, and I can see it all there. I can see the solution. I can see I'm massively excited about something, and then I have to put it down on paper. And I'll send it out full of excitement, or sometimes I'll post something on LinkedIn full of excitement and wow, and then nobody can understand what I've written down, or somebody would come back and say there's a spelling mistake, or you know, what did you mean by that? And all of that. If I'm hiding the dyslexia, everything I've just said gets and done. It just gets ruined. As soon as I say, look, sorry, I'm dyslexic, let me try and explain, let's have a conversation about this. Or I get somebody, and I often do it to Katie now, I've had this moment of creativity, and I think, Katie, can you just check my spelling before I send this out? And disclose, and all the problems go away. And that creativity can come out. So I'd encourage your daughter, really encourage her to, as you say, and her school is teaching her, thank God, be proud of your assets.
I think the people currently in the workforce also grew up covering up, and often their struggles were pointed out to them over and over and over again by teachers and by their parents and so on. So that's sort of that then covering up mode. And then to change, that's very hard. It's just an incredible hurdle to then say, oh, by the way, I'm not good at this. If you've spent a long time pretending that you are normal. And luckily, people who are at school now, the young ones, they grow up differently, and it's part of who they are. Hannah, my colleague at HSBC, who's so amazing at maths, she came off the graduate program, I think 2 years ago, and she's got a totally different attitude. She's more the way you describe your daughter. It's really part of her, and it gives her certain skills, and she's really proud of those skills. And she's not happy to admit that she's struggling with something, but she does. And she says, well, you know what, rather than me sitting here for 3 days trying to write minutes for this meeting, why don't we swap? You write the minutes and I do your spreadsheet. And I think a lot of colleagues who are currently in the industry would just battle their way through and just sit there weekend and write those minutes, because they're not used to openly admitting that they're struggling and that they would need help. So it's a little bit of a culture change, which is taking place at schools and university, and more and more will then feed through to the workforce.
Yeah, she's very good at saying, I think differently to others. And that's my superpower.
Great. Fantastic.
Although she's very creative like Mark. However, she does tend to over control stuff because her mind is such a mess. She tends to over control. And that also, I was just mulling over, you said the strength is soft skills. Sometimes it's not. She's over controlling everyone else around her as well. The entire family are regimented by what, you know, her idea of the itinerary. So that's how it manifests itself within our house.
Yeah, it can. And also, I mean, even that results from fear of losing control, because you've got so much in your head and you're not good at planning and organizing. So you try to stick to a certain schedule, and this then calms you down. Unfortunately, freaks everyone else out, but it makes her feel better.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Great. Yeah, so it's still not easy for everyone currently in the workforce to openly talk about their needs, to share their neurodivergence and even to talk about their strengths. So it's important, I think, to be aware of that there's a lot of people who have not disclosed, and even if they do, they might not be very comfortable to talk about it all the time and on all occasions. Recruitment. So how do we make it work? This is apparently this is from Einstein. Nobody really knows, but I love this picture. This is unfortunately the approach which is often followed when it comes to recruitment. For a fair selection, everyone has to take the same exam. Please climb this tree. And obviously, these candidates all have very, very different skills, and nobody's better or worse. They're just totally different. And when it comes to neurodivergent brains, we're incredibly good at weeding out talent at entry stage. So job descriptions, that's what it starts with. There's job descriptions which go over 3 pages, and they've got a lot of nice to haves, and some even have a preset expectation when it comes to academic background, and they list, yeah, please, CFA, we'd like an MBA, we'd like a degree from a top university, and so on and so on. And I think that's probably driven by the intention of wanting to hire somebody who's intelligent, and that's fair, but there's many different ways of intelligence, and by, for example, stating that the CFA exam is a must-have, you will unintentionally weed out, let's take dyslexic people as an example, because CFA sent you 7 books of incredibly boring content around Christmas time and then expect you to spit everything out in June. And that's quite a task. There's no other way to acquire the information. You have to read those books, and you have to do it really quickly, and you have to save down all information. And I think we just need to broaden the understanding that there are some people who probably would have liked to do CFA, but they couldn't. And this doesn't mean that they couldn't be bothered or they weren't intelligent enough and so on. It was just something which didn't work for them. And there's other ways of acquiring the information which is required to do your job really, really well. So, so the recommendation there is to really think about what your candidate should look like, what kind of skills they need, and have the job description really concise and list those skills, rather than just put everything down and have a 3-4 page job description. Some firms also add a note to their job description saying that you don't have to have all of these skills. We will consider candidates which meet most requirements, which is great for autistic candidates, for example, because they tend to take everything literally. So they would probably not apply if they wouldn't tick every single box perfectly. So just have a little bit of a caveat saying that, well, we'll look at your CV even if you do not perfectly deliver to every single box. That can help and just broaden the talent pool and the pool of candidates who are applying. And then
Meike, can I just interrupt there? So obviously E2W has got a recruitment side of the business where clients come to us because they have a specific intention to go out and find female candidates for open roles, and there is a preference for good diversity reasons for recruiting a woman into the role. If a firm, particularly at experienced higher level, wanted to particularly recruit somebody who's neurodiverse, where would they go and how would they do that? I guess there's nowhere today.
There's not yet a lot of recruitment agencies who even who are specializing, let's say, in neurodivergent candidates. There is Stack Recruitment, who are a social enterprise focusing on this area. or type of the workforce or candidate pool. But other than that, there's not too many. There are a few charities who are trying to advance autism employment, for example, because the
ambitious about
rate is
autism.
very, very poor. It's not necessarily, sounds awful, but it's not necessarily focused on, I think, our industry. So I think for financial services and related industry sectors, there's not much yet.
I was wondering, because you started really by presenting the skills of people with this kind of condition, let's say, and I can imagine that if I want somebody in a marketing role, very creative, I'm going to ask, I mean, based on what you've just said, I would like to say in the job description, I'm going to focus on the creative ones and the skills, which I know I will find more in that segment than in others. And if they don't have organization skills or whatever, I won't even mention it and try to think, oh, I want the best in creativity and I'm going to tap there, and the rest I'll deal with it is not important. And same thing for autistic people. I think I would like the best quants or whatever, and I don't care whether they can interact with anybody. And therefore, in that case, I won't even mention anything else, and I will get those people without even talking about the constraints. But if we just look for skills and not all-rounders, that would be amazing.
I couldn't agree more. That would be the ideal world, yeah. When we look at the tech firms, they are a lot more advanced. There are some firms which are only recruiting autistic candidates, for example. Bigger firms like SAP have autism recruitment programs, and they want their workforce to be 1% made of autistic employees. And then increase representation further in future years. But what you just described would be the perfect way of going about it. Really just focus on the strengths, best person for the job. And if they're not good at doing small talk at the coffee machine, so be it, because that's not really what you've hired them for. But I think at the moment, we're not quite there yet. So we're basically on a journey to have people recognize that those standardized processes when it comes to recruitment, but also standardized processes when it comes to year-end appraisals, preset expectations of how you should interact at a certain level of seniority, all of that all of this gets into our way when we want to access those skills. And we just have to recognize this and also work on breaking up all of those preset assumptions and expectations.
Yeah.
And hopefully, if we all work together, we can get there. It's going to be a bit of a journey, but in the end, we will tackle it. Yeah. Yeah, so those standardized tests, for example, like I said, with my lovely friend Adam, who had a fantastic degree, really good university, but he just couldn't get a graduate role because he struggled with those psychometric tests and those assessment centers, a massive number of people in the interview room. He just couldn't cope with all the distraction, with all the unfiltered observations which were hitting his brain. And so he just couldn't make it through a normal recruitment process. And what a shame it would have been for the financial industry if he hadn't got his foot into one of the banks. And luckily he's here now. So I think we just have to be aware of those challenges. There's no one size fits all, and we have to adjust and just be more flexible, because if we aren't, we're going to miss a huge, huge talent pool and very amazing skills. And most of those things we need to consider are quite small things, actually. I can see Gemma has got her hand up.
Hi, Meike. Yes, thank you. One question that I would be intrigued to know, when you apply for a role, they obviously ask about any restrictions, anything sort of from a disability standpoint that you should be identifying. Do you think there is a right way to approach that in terms of often feeling sort of myself with a more physical disability feel that those questions, when they're asked, you're wondering whether actually, although you know they have an obligation to not sort of discriminate against you on that point, do you feel that there's a right way to approach it, that actually you're not going to discount yourself from the process by admitting that you have a challenge?
I think that's a very fair question. Whenever I apply for a job, I think about whether to respond yes or no to this question. I would love to respond yes and just say, don't ask rapid fire questions, for example. I really struggle with there's really random questions. Somebody asks you, give me a pitch for your product, and then the next question is, what's your people management style? And when there's very abrupt changes of topic, I find it really hard to get my brain into the new direction and give a decent response to the next question if the two of them don't have anything to do with each other. And again, that just needs, tiny adjustment. You just, as the interviewer, do a little bit of an intro. Yeah, thank you very much. It was really interesting to hear about your product. Actually, this role has some management responsibilities. I am therefore going to ask a few questions about your people management skills and experience. And then that is already enough to sort of allow my brain to slow down, to recognize that we're going to talk about a different topic, and then sort of get into that area and talk about it. But whether I want to disclose this or not at the very, very first stage of an interview process or recruitment process, I've so far decided against it, and I've decided against it for the exact reason you've pointed out. I thought that it might be interpreted in some sort of way, like, oh my God, if she can't even deal with that, and it's really just, a conversation, what is she going to be like in the office? So I, in a way, feared negative consequences.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of something to consider. I think when we're putting forward candidates, it's hard to know whether, given the situation that we had somebody who perhaps needed a slight explanation as to their path or the way that they've got to where they have, or their thought process. I think in some situations you might feel that you want to sort of put that explanation in to prevent them perhaps being rejected by the client based on something that actually you can explain.
Mm-hmm.
It's knowing how, as a recruiter, we would make that sort of, at what stage of a candidate's process we would make them aware that actually there may be a need, or there may be some gaps that aren't within a skill set, but within, like you say, a social situation or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, during an interview, just test what you want this person to do when they're on the job. And small talk, for example, is not necessarily the number one item you want somebody to be able to be perfect at when they're in the office. And just to recognize that we would like to find out whether this person is able to do the role or not. That's the whole point of it. And tailor the interview to deliver to this objective that's the key thing here. And if we don't do that, we're going to miss the fact that a dyslexic person, as just described, can be wonderfully creative and will probably be a fantastic digital marketer because they've got crazy ideas. They would just need somebody to go through their LinkedIn posts. So there's no complaints about spelling, and that is all. So breaking up all of those beliefs, and this is how I got here, this is how I work, and therefore this is what I would recommend to somebody else as well. And that's often, well intended, but we just have to recognize that it's not, whilst our intention might be great, it might not be helpful to somebody else, it might actually be counterproductive to somebody else.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Another thing in interviews are open questions. Open questions is something a lot of neurodivergent brains struggle with. A lot are very, very focused on results. Autistic brains, for example, take quite a lot of things literally. So if you ask a question like, what brings you here today? They're like, what do you want to know? And they could say, yeah, the bus or something, because that's the response to this particular question. It's just meant to be an icebreaker, and people are assumed to know that you are supposed to respond something which is related to the role which you're applying for and why you're a good candidate and in a good position to perform this role. But not all candidates know this. And it's just important to be aware that quite an innocent question, just, a small talk, icebreaker, conversation opener, can already be a struggle for some of the candidates. And then obviously you would get a response, which some people might find weird. And there's obviously a risk that you exclude somebody from your process who would otherwise have been perfectly set up to perform the role. So it's really about being aware of all of those little challenges and all of those hidden traps, which otherwise we wouldn't really recognize.
Meike, can I just say, I'm conscious we're moving towards the hour, and I'm guessing some people are needing to get back to work or do other things. How are you for time yourself?
Oh, I am absolutely perfect. I've got all afternoon.
All afternoon. Can I make a suggestion then? If we, I don't know how many, I can't remember how many slides you've got left, but if we get through the rest of the slides, and then perhaps open up for discussion at the end if people want to hang around after the hour.
Sure.
And talk, because I think this is a fascinating subject.
Yeah, and thank you for asking so many questions. It's really great. Let's have a quick look at this one here, because that's about the office environment. So let's assume somebody successfully was recruited and they are autistic or dyslexic or in the office environment, and that's obviously the proper office. Here are a few things which can really help them. A lot of neurodivergent brains suffer from sensory overload, and this means that you hear every single noise in the room at the exact same noise level. So if somebody has a conversation over there, it can be as if they're whispering it right into your ear. It's very disruptive, it's not particularly pleasant, and therefore a lot of neurodivergent colleagues wear headphones all the time. You block out the noise, but sometimes you're also judged on that, and there's sort of the assumption, oh yeah, doesn't want to be part of the team, and is not particularly interested in engaging with colleagues and so on. So to allow them or to enable them not to stand out, and especially not being judged in a negative way, it's easier to allow everyone to wear headphones. It's fine. This is just something you may want to do, or you may want to sit in a meeting room to work on a particular spreadsheet, and that is fine. We're not going to judge you on not being at your desk for the whole afternoon. Nobody's going to say, is she at the pub or what? So really opening up a little bit and having in mind that there's many different ways of getting to the right result. Hot desking doesn't apply at the moment, but once we go back to normal, this is particularly difficult for neurodivergent colleagues. We all hate it, but for example, for autistic colleagues who are very, very often suffering from sensory overload, from there being too much light, from different smells, from different noises, and find it really hard to adjust to changes. Hot desking can be a disaster and can really lead to quite substantial stress, which they probably wouldn't want to admit to because they don't want to be seen as weak. Everyone else obviously hates it too, but somehow deals with it, and that's a challenge there. So just be aware of that. Having a fixed desk for those colleagues really helps them a lot. It makes totally different work life. Flexible work hours are really helpful, and not just we all work from home one day a week or something, but to really allow people to tailor their workday flexibly, maybe come to work a little bit later to avoid rush hour, which can be incredibly stressful for autistic colleagues, for example, when the Northern Line is, packed, as it usually is. But also come to work on a Saturday when the office is quiet, do your stuff on a Saturday, really focus on it, and maybe then take the Monday off instead. So properly flexible work hours would be great. That would really be something which would help inclusion a lot. When you deal with neurodivergent colleagues, clear instructions really help. So relates back to the don't ask open questions, what brings you here today type. When you give somebody a task, say, this is what we're trying to achieve, this is the outcome we are looking for, and instruct them clearly. And then focus on results and not how they got to the result. It doesn't really matter whether an ADHD colleague's desk looks like a bomb has just exploded. If they get to the right result and they come up with amazing ideas, yeah, so be it. And the last point here is very important, and that's probably the one I'd like to conclude on. Accept that sometimes help is needed for perceived easy tasks. This can be something as simple as putting together your daily to-do list and prioritizing this to-do list. Sometimes people will need help with that because it just doesn't come easily to them. And this doesn't mean that they don't get it or that they're too lazy or not intelligent. It's just nothing brain is properly set up for. They could probably get there because they're intelligent enough to figure it out, but it puts a strain on them and it wastes energy, which could be used for something else. And the last sentence here is very important. Don't expect any improvement in those areas. So when you sit down with those colleagues and you help them sort out their to-do list and you do it 3 times, then don't say, oh, now I've sorted out, I've shown you how to do it 3 times. I'm pretty sure you can do it. This is a challenge resulting from how their brain is wired, and how their brain is wired is not going to change. So they're going to have this challenge over and over and over again every single time. And we just need to accept that. And there's a great example by Russell Barkley, who's one of the most famous ADHD researchers. And he says, well, if somebody, comes to work and they're in a wheelchair, you obviously put up a ramp to allow them to get into the building. So this ramp helps them overcome the otherwise very disabling consequences of their conditions. And would you ever say to such a person, well, after 30 days of successfully entering this building, I'm going to take the ramp away because I'm pretty sure you will now have learned how to get into this building? You would, of course, not do that, because it's there to help them overcome the steps which lead into your office building, and they will need it every single morning, and nobody questions that. And therefore, you can explain to, let's say, an autistic brain over and over and over again that we do these 2 minutes of small talk before we kick off the product development committee meeting. That's just part of it, but they will get it. And you will have to remind them every single time, because their brain is simply not set up to put aside time for small talk, because that's nothing which for them is relevant to achieve the task which we are there to do, which we are there to achieve. So that's sort of the little ramp they would need every single time. And I think to just keep this in mind and say, okay, we're all different, and sometimes we need help with certain tasks. And if so, don't judge, and just, provide it and accept the strengths and the weaknesses as they are, because only if we provide support with the challenges, we're going to be able to access the amazing skills. So that would be really a recommendation, or an ask almost, which I would have, because I think that is the main item where we tend to really disrupt the process and really impact our own ability to properly harness the amazing skills which we otherwise would have on offer. Yeah, but we're over time.
So I need to come off mute and say thank you. I found that truly inspirational, and probably one of the best, can I say, and most informative presentations of its kind that I've seen. Really clearly explaining the benefits, the challenges, the what to do's, and some thought about the process ahead. Meike, thank you very
thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.